breaking news that's coming in. Prime Minister Modi, we're getting that news break that Prime Minister Modi had two very important telephone conversations. He's spoken with the King of Bahrain, King Hamad bin Issa Al Khalifa. He's also spoken with the Crown Prince, the Prime Minister of Saudi Arabia, MBS Mohammed bin Salman. Prime Minister Modi in this conversation has condemned the attacks on both these countries. So that's Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. He's discussed the well-being of the Indian community in both countries. Sizable Indian population in both of these countries, and that's something that the government has been watching out for. He made a mention of it in the Cabinet Committee on Security, a meet also that happened earlier. But as the information we're picking up right now is that the Prime Minister has spoken to these Gulf leaders, to Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, sending out a very clear message of condemnation on the attacks that both these countries have suffered as a result of the conflict over the weekend that's broken out. He's also discussed the well-being of the Indian community in both countries. We'll get in our MEA correspondent on this as well. But Sandeep, you know, there's been a lot of questions right now about how India is looking at what's playing out in the Middle East. What kind of a stand will they take? And as far as India is concerned, the Prime Minister said we're on the side of peace. And of course, in the course of that is why we're seeing these conversations perhaps also happening.
Absolutely, Akshita. And you know, the Prime Minister has said this before, that now is not the time for war. And I think that is a line that he has consistently pushed ever since he, said that to President Putin, and that's been, what, 4 years now. Now, you know, at a time when the region is in flames, literally, by what's going on in the last 2 or 3 days, it must be emphasized that India is friends with all of the regional countries. We have no enemies in the Gulf, and that is one reason that we are held in such good stead. We are friends with Saudi Arabia. We're even better friends with the United Arab Emirates. Iran is a close friend and a partner of ours. We are friends of all countries in the region. So that's Prime Minister Modi out there reaching out to the Gulf GCC countries, the Gulf monarchies, and of course balancing it by talking to Iran as well. We have sent our delegations to Iran, to let them know that we stand by them as well. So it's a tough time for India, and a particularly trying time for Indian diplomacy, given the fact that we have such a large diaspora there in the Gulf right now, and they're extremely vulnerable. If the war continues, they could be affected. There would be contingency plans already in place. The Indian military that you saw there with the Prime Minister, they would already be working on contingencies, particularly the Air Force and the Navy. If there's an airlift to be done, if there is a sea lift to be done, if there's a combined air and sea lift to be done, then the Indian military will have to step up and handle operations after that. I'm sure all these options are being discussed even as we speak, actually.
No, and there's been, the government has been very actively coordinating with many of the embassies, trying to ensure that all necessary help is given to the Indians who are currently in these countries. And if they sense that any of them are really in danger, immediate help will be provided. But for now, the messaging has been very clear from the Indian government that if you do need anything, reach out to us, but that it's not in a situation where there is an evacuation that's necessary right now. The focus is on providing all necessary help and assistance, but the message also from the Indian government right now is that they're closely monitoring the situation with their counterparts, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's Bahrain. We've seen a conversation previously with the UAE as well. So these conversations will keep happening in the course of the next few days as well, because there are so many Gulf countries that have been affected as a result of this war, and the Indian government making it a point to send out a message that irrespective of what's playing out, India stands for peace. And for many of these countries who've kind of essentially been dragged into this conflict, the government is sending out a message of solidarity with them, which is why, importantly, whether it's the conversation with Bahrain or the conversation with the Saudi Arabian Prime Minister Modi has condemned the attacks that have taken place on both of these countries. The war is still underway. And the message from India is very clear that any violence, any attacks, we will condemn unequivocally. And that's the message that's gone in through these particular conversations as well. We know that previously there has been a conversation also that's been had with the UAE. But Sandeep, also on the point that you're seeing many of these world leaders having these conversations. Prime Minister Modi has done it. You've had the Russian president also speaking to some of them. I'll bring in Pranay Upadhyay of India Today Global on this broadcast. Pranay, just for those updates of what you've picked up on the conversation the Prime Minister Modi has had with these leaders.
In last 12 hours, Akshita, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had phone conversation with 4 leaders, including Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and UAE President Zayed. And today, Prime Minister Modi called up the Sultan of Bahrain and also the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. And these are very important and very crucial conversations because on one side, Prime Minister Modi condemned the attack on these countries where a large number of civilian population and civilian areas have also been targeted. And besides that, obviously, the Government of India has its own concern regarding Indians in these countries because in Bahrain, there is a large population of Indians. In Saudi Arabia, in UAE, around 45 lakh Indians are there. Many Indians are stranded. Yesterday Prime Minister Modi chaired a 2.5-hour-long Cabinet Committee on Security meeting, wherein the plans to evacuate or safe evacuation of Indians were also discussed. And in fact, the senior military commanders were also there, including Chief of Defence Staff, and 3 service chiefs were also there. And in fact, the Defence Ministry have been asked to work out plans that how we can evacuate those who are stranded in these countries, and especially in the Gulf region.
All right, Pranay, thanks very much for getting us those updates. We're going to track very closely all the steps that are taken by India in the course of this conflict. There have been a lot of questions being asked about what India's stand is on this war. The Prime Minister put out a message earlier today when he was issuing the joint statement with the Canadian Prime Minister, where he said very clearly that India is on the side of peace. That's our stated position through and through all of these conflicts that we've been seeing in the last few years.